The first thing I heard was my own name spoken softly like a decision already made. Evelyn doesn't need to know yet. I was standing in my daughter's kitchen holding a casserole dish that had gone cold in my hands. It was 3 days before Thanksgiving. Outside, the late autumn wind scraped dry leaves across the patio. Inside, my son's voice carried through the half-closed door of the study, calm, practical, stripped of affection. That was the moment my life split in two. I had not meant to eavesdrop. I had come early as I always did to help, to be useful, to remind myself that even at 62, recently retired widowed for 5 years, I still mattered to someone. The smell of sage and onions should have made me feel safe. Instead, my stomach tightened as if I had swallowed ice. "She'll agree eventually," my daughter-in-law replied. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed. "She trusts us. She always has." Agree to what? I stood there, heart pounding, the casserole trembling against my ribs. I should have walked away. I should have knocked. But something in the way they said my name, not with love, not with irritation, but with calculation, rooted me to the tile floor. "She's getting older," my son said. "We need to think long term. The house is too big for her anyway." The house. My house. The one my late husband and I had bought 40 years ago, the one with the magnolia tree out front, and the creaking third stair he never fixed because he liked the sound. The house I still paid taxes on. The house I had let them manage after my stroke scare last year because they insisted, because they said it was temporary, because I wanted to believe them. "She'll sign," my daughter-in-law said. "Once the lawyer explains it's for her own good." The dish slipped from my hands and shattered. Silence followed, then the door opened. They looked at me like children caught stealing. My son's face drained of color. My daughter-in-law forced a smile that never reached her eyes. "Mom," he said, "how long have you been standing there?" "Long enough." I laughed then, a small, broken sound that surprised all of us. "Long enough to hear you planning my future without me." They rushed to explain. They always did. Words like safety, convenience, estate planning burden floated around the kitchen like smoke. They said nothing definitive, nothing I could hold on to, nothing I could accuse. But I saw it. The truth sat between us, heavy and undeniable. They wanted control. That night, alone in my bedroom at their house, I lay awake listening to the unfamiliar quiet. I had moved in 6 months earlier after they insisted I should not live alone anymore. "Just until we figure things out," they said. I had packed one suitcase. I had told myself it was temporary. I thought of the lawyer. I thought of the will my husband and I had written years ago, then revised quietly after his death. I thought of the accounts my children did not know existed. I thought of the small locked drawer in my study back home untouched since I moved. Most of all, I thought of how easily they had discussed me like an obstacle. By morning, the shock hardened into something sharper. Resolve. At breakfast, I smiled. I poured coffee. I apologized for dropping the casserole. I played the role they expected, the agreeable aging mother, the grateful grandmother. I listened as they talked about Christmas plans, about renovations to a house that was not theirs. And when my daughter-in-law casually mentioned scheduling a meeting with the attorney, I nodded and said, "Of course, whatever you think is best." That was my first lie. That afternoon while they were out, I made my own call, to a name I had not spoken in years. "Margaret Lawson, estate attorney." When she answered, I felt something loosen in my chest. "Margaret," I said, "this is Evelyn Carter. I think it's time we reviewed everything." She paused, then gently, "Has something happened?" "Yes," I said, "and I believe it's only just beginning." Outside, the wind howled harder, rattling the windows like a warning. Inside, I opened my notebook and began to write down everything I remembered. Dates, conversations, documents, lies disguised as concern. I did not yet know how far this would go. But I knew one thing. I was done being managed. And by the time they realized I had stopped playing along, it would already be too late. By the following Monday, I understood exactly how invisible I had become. At 62, invisibility arrives quietly. People stop asking your opinion. Conversations shift around you, not toward you. Decisions are made in rooms you are not invited into with the polite assumption that you would not understand anyway. I saw it clearly now because once you start looking for betrayal, you notice its fingerprints everywhere. My son Andrew used to call me every evening after his father died. Short calls. Awkward silences, but they were ours. After he married Lisa, the calls dwindled. After I moved in with them, they vanished entirely. Everything went through her. Lisa will handle it, he would say, already distracted. Lisa knows the details. Lisa knew everything. My medications, my bank logins, my calendar. She had offered to organize my paperwork when I moved in, saying it would help reduce my stress. I had let her. I had thanked her. Now, sitting alone at the kitchen table while they were both at work, I realized how thoroughly I had been boxed in. I could not find my original will. The folder I remembered, the blue one labeled personal, was gone. In its place was a neat binder with tabs all prepared by Lisa. Power of attorney drafts, medical directives, financial summaries I did not recognize. I felt a pulse of anger, quick and hot, followed by something colder. Fear. I called Margaret again. She listened as I explained everything, her silence heavy on the line. When I finished, she asked one question. Did you sign anything recently? I thought back. Lisa sliding papers across the table. Casual explanations, just updates, just standard forms. I may have, I said. I didn't read everything carefully. Another pause. All right, Margaret said. Here's what we're going to do. First, you stop signing anything. Second, you come see me. Alone. We scheduled the meeting for Friday morning. I told no one. The rest of the week unfolded like a test of endurance. Lisa's kindness sharpened into something watchful. She asked where I was going, who I was calling. Andrew grew distant, irritated by questions I had never asked before. On Wednesday evening during dinner, Lisa placed an envelope beside my plate. Just something to look over, she said lightly. Nothing urgent. My hands shook as I picked it up. Inside was a preliminary document outlining the transfer of my home into a family trust managed by Andrew and Lisa. In exchange, I would receive lifetime residency rights contingent on compliance with care recommendations. Care recommendations. I read it twice, then a third time. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with fury. They were not just planning my future, they were erasing my authority entirely. That night, I dreamed of my husband standing in the doorway of our old house, shaking his head, unable to speak. On Friday morning, I told Lisa I had a doctor's appointment. She offered to come with me. I refused. For the first time, I heard irritation in her voice that she did not bother to hide. At Margaret's office, the air smelled of leather and old paper. Familiar, safe. She laid everything out calmly. What they had done, what they were trying to do, what they could and could not legally take. They are assuming you will comply, she said. Because you always have. I nodded. That was true. Do you want to stop this? She asked. Or do you want to make sure they never try it again? The question settled into me like a stone. I thought of Thanksgiving dinner, of Lisa carving the turkey at the head of the table, of Andrew smiling nervously, of my grandchildren watching everything, learning who held power and who did not. I want to finish it, I said, properly. Margaret's eyes sharpened. Then we'll need patience and silence. And one thing above all. What's that? Let them believe they're winning. When I returned home that afternoon, Lisa asked how my appointment went. Everything looks fine, I said, and meant something very different. She smiled, relieved. That night I signed nothing. Instead, I began planning. I learned very quickly that playing weak required discipline. Strength is loud. Weakness is quiet, patient, observant. And if you are not careful, pretending to be powerless can hollow you out from the inside. I reminded myself every morning that this was temporary, that what looked like surrender was strategy. Lisa doubled down. She started leaving pamphlets on the counter. Assisted living communities, estate planning guides, articles printed from the internet with phrases like planning for cognitive decline, and when adult children must step in, helpfully highlighted in yellow. Just information, she would say, breezy. So we're prepared. Prepared for what? My death, my disappearance, my compliance. Andrew avoided my eyes more than ever. When I tried to talk to him alone, Lisa somehow always appeared carrying laundry or offering tea. She spoke for him, finished his sentences, touched his arm when he hesitated, grounding him back into her version of reality. I watched my son shrink in front of me. One evening while Lisa was upstairs bathing the children, I asked Andrew directly, "Do you think I'm incapable of managing my own life?" He startled like I'd raised my voice. "No," he said too quickly. "Of course not." "Then why are you letting her take it from me?" He stared at his plate. "You worry too much. Lisa just likes things organized." Organized. Another word that meant control. That night, I called my oldest friend, Joan. We had known each other since college, survived marriages, miscarriages, careers, and widowhood together. She listened without interrupting as I finally let everything spill out. "They're moving faster than you think," she said when I finished. "And you're right to be afraid." "I'm not afraid," I said. "I'm angry." "Good," she replied. "Anger will keep you awake." Joan offered me something invaluable, a place to go, quietly, when the time came. The following week, Lisa scheduled the lawyer meeting. She presented it as casual, almost celebratory. "Just a conversation," she said, "so everyone feels secure." The lawyer's office was modern and cold. Glass walls, minimalist furniture. He spoke in smooth, practiced tones, addressing most of his explanations to Lisa, not me. When he slid the documents across the table, Lisa's hand covered mine. "This is the part where you sign," she said softly. I looked at the papers. I recognized Margaret's language nowhere. This was not my will. This was not my trust. "I'd like to review these with my attorney," I said. The room froze. Lisa's smile tightened. "We already reviewed them." "Yes," I replied, "but I haven't." Andrew cleared his throat. "Mom, this is just formalizing what we discussed. I don't recall agreeing to give up my house," I said calmly. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Carter, perhaps we should pause." Lisa's eyes flashed just for a moment. Then she leaned back, hands folded. "Of course," she said. "We don't want you to feel pressured." Pressure. That was rich. As we left the office, she said nothing. Andrew said nothing. The silence was punishment. That night, Lisa packed my favorite sweater into a donation bag. "It doesn't fit your lifestyle anymore," she said when I noticed. Something inside me snapped into focus. They were already preparing for a world without me in it, and I was done waiting. I called Margaret the next morning and told her everything. She listened. Then she said it's time to change the balance. How I asked. "You leave," she said, "but on your terms." I stared at the window at the street where I no longer felt at home. When I asked, "Soon," she replied, "before they make it impossible." That night I packed a small bag and hid it in the trunk of my car. Lisa didn't notice. I left on a Tuesday morning just after Andrew took the kids to school, and Lisa left for her Pilates class. No goodbye, no note, no explanation. I drove slowly at first, heart hammering, expecting my phone to ring immediately. It didn't. That hurt more than I expected. Joan's guest room smelled like lavender and old books. Safe, neutral, mine for now. By the time Lisa realized I was gone, Margaret had already moved. She froze every document Lisa had touched, revoked all provisional powers, filed notices with my bank, my physician, my insurance. By the end of the day, Lisa's access to my life had vanished. That evening, my phone exploded. "Where are you? This isn't funny. You're overreacting. Think about the children." I turned it off. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. The next morning, Margaret and I met again. This time, she showed me the full picture. They tried to transfer the house into a trust that would eventually belong to them outright, she said. They were accelerating the timeline. How long, I asked. "Within a year," she replied. 2 at most. My chest tightened. And now I asked, "What happens?" "Now," she said, "you take control back publicly." The plan unfolded slowly, carefully. We updated my will. Completely. New beneficiaries. New conditions. Safeguards that would activate only if specific behaviors occurred. I insisted on one clause in particular, one Margaret warned me would cause fireworks. "I want it enforceable," I said. "It will be," she replied. Meanwhile, Lisa escalated. She filed a wellness check with the police. When 2 officers knocked on Joan's door, I felt humiliation burn through me like acid. But I welcomed them in, calmly showed them documentation, answered every question. They left apologetic. Lisa texted immediately after. "I was just worried. You scared us." I didn't reply. Then came the narrative. Extended family began calling, concerned, confused. Lisa had been busy, painting me as unstable, manipulated, ungrateful. "She's confused since the stroke," she told my sister. "We're just trying to help." I let it spread. Because lies grow loud right before they collapse. At Thanksgiving, I was absent for the first time in my life. I ate dinner with Joan, and her sister watched the parade on television and felt something loosen inside me that I hadn't realized was bound so tight. 2 days later, Andrew showed up at Joan's house. He looked wrecked, hollow, smaller than I remembered. "You didn't have to disappear," he said. "Yes," I replied, "I did." Lisa sat in the car, watching. "They're saying you're not thinking clearly," he continued. I met his eyes. "Are you saying that?" He hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. "I have done everything for this family," I said quietly. "And you let her erase me." "She's my wife," he said helplessly. "And I'm your mother," I replied. The silence stretched. "I've changed my will," I said finally. His head snapped up. Fear flickered across his face before he masked it. "I suggest," I continued, "that you read it carefully when the time comes." He swallowed. "You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." As he left, I watched Lisa's face through the windshield. Her smile was gone. For the first time, she looked unsure, and that told me everything. By December, the war had become polite. That was the most dangerous stage. Lisa stopped calling. Andrew stopped texting. The silence felt deliberate, strategic, like the pause before a legal move. I knew enough about people like her to understand that calm was never surrender. It was regrouping. Margaret warned me. When someone loses access, they look for leverage. The leverage appeared in the form of my grandchildren. A handwritten card arrived first. My granddaughter's looping letters, misspelled words, hearts drawn in the corners. We miss you. Grandma Mom says you need space. I hope you are better soon. I sat at Joan's kitchen table holding that card until my hands ached. Lisa had found the one weapon I could never fully block. A week later, Andrew called. His voice was careful, rehearsed. The kids are asking questions. Lisa thinks maybe we should set some boundaries until things calm down. Boundaries. Another word repurposed into punishment. You're keeping them from me, I said. We're protecting them, he replied. I closed my eyes. From what? Their grandmother. He didn't answer. That night I cried harder than I had since my husband died. Not loudly, not dramatically. The kind of crying that drains you quietly, leaving you hollow and exhausted. I called Margaret the next morning and told her everything. She listened, then said something that shifted the ground beneath me. Evelyn, this is no longer just about property or paperwork. This is coercion. The words settled heavily in my chest. They are attempting to force compliance by withholding access to your family, she continued. That changes how we respond. How I asked. We document everything she said, and we prepare for confrontation. Meanwhile, Lisa escalated the public narrative. She posted on social media vague, sympathetic posts about caregiving challenges, about loving someone who refuses help, about adult children being forced into impossible roles. No names, no accusations, just implication. Friends messaged me, some gently, some with concern thinly veiled as judgment. Are you okay? I hope you're getting the help you need. Families are complicated. I responded to none of it. Instead, I began keeping a detailed journal. Dates, messages, screenshots, voicemails. Margaret called it my shadow record, the truth running parallel to the story Lisa was selling. Then came Christmas. For the first time in my life, I was not invited. Andrew sent a short text. We think it's best to keep things quiet this year. Quiet meant controlled. On Christmas morning, I sat with Joan, sipping coffee, staring at a tree I had not decorated myself. My phone stayed silent. No call, no video, nothing. No video. Something inside me hardened permanently. By New Year's, Margaret had everything she needed. They've overplayed their hand, she said. Now you decide how visible you want this to be. I thought of Lisa's posts, of my grandchildren's card, of Andrew standing in Joan's doorway, unable to choose. I want the truth on record, I said. I don't need revenge. I need accountability. Margaret nodded. Then we file. The petition went in mid-January. It challenged the attempted transfer of my assets. It documented coercive control. It requested formal mediation with legal oversight. Lisa lost her temper for the first time. She called me directly, voice sharp, stripped of warmth. You're humiliating us. You did that yourselves, I replied calmly. This will destroy the family, she snapped. No, I said, this will reveal it. She hung up on me. I sat very still afterward, heart pounding, knowing something irreversible had begun. Because once truth enters, the room lies, have nowhere to sit. The mediation was scheduled for early February. Neutral office, neutral mediator, neutral language. Nothing about it felt neutral. Lisa arrived first, impeccably dressed, posture, rigid lips pressed tight. Andrew followed behind her shoulders, slumped eyes tired. They did not look at me when I entered. Margaret squeezed my hand once before we sat. The mediator began with formalities. Goals, expectations, ground rules. Lisa broke them within minutes. She's confused, she said, gesturing toward me as if I were not there. This is all fear-driven. We've done nothing but care for her. I waited. Margaret had warned me. Let her speak. She abandoned the family, Lisa continued. Left without explanation. Withheld contact. Traumatized the children. I felt my jaw tighten, but I stayed silent. When she finished, the mediator turned to me. Mrs. Carter. I took a breath. I did not abandon my family, I said evenly. I removed myself from a situation where my autonomy was being systematically stripped away. Lisa scoffed. I did not withhold contact, I continued. I was blocked, redirected, controlled. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. And I did not traumatize my grandchildren, I said. They were used as leverage against me. The mediator held up a hand. Mrs. Carter, do you have documentation to support this? Margaret slid the folder across the table. Everything was there. Messages, posts, the unsigned trust drafts, the wellness check report, the police notes, the screenshots of Lisa's public narrative. As the mediator flipped through the pages, Lisa's composure cracked. This is an invasion of privacy, she snapped. No, Margaret said calmly. It's a record of behavior. The room went quiet. Then the mediator turned to Andrew. Mr. Carter, do you agree with your wife's characterization of events? Andrew stared at his hands. This was the moment everything hinged on. He could lie. He could protect her. He could finish what they started. I don't know anymore, he said finally. Lisa whipped her head toward him. Andrew. I don't, he repeated. Things got out of hand. Her face changed. The mask slipped. She's manipulating you, Lisa said sharply. She's always been good at that. I looked at my son. I never asked you to choose, I said quietly. I asked you to see me. The mediator cleared his throat. Based on the materials provided, I recommend a pause on all asset discussions and an immediate restoration of Mrs. Carter's independent authority. Lisa stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. It's binding, the mediator replied. She froze. Andrew looked at me, then really looked at me, and something in his expression broke. I didn't think it would go this far, he whispered. I nodded. Neither did I. The mediation ended unresolved, but the power had shifted. Outside in the parking lot, Lisa confronted me. You think you've won, she hissed. I met her gaze calmly. No, I think you've been seen. She turned away furious. As I watched them leave, Margaret leaned close. This was only the beginning. I exhaled slowly. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I believed her. After the mediation, the silence returned, but this time it felt different. It was no longer tactical, it was stunned. Andrew did not call. Lisa did not post. The family group chat stayed dormant, like an abandoned room no one wanted to enter first. I knew that quiet meant they were reassessing damage, recalculating leverage, deciding whether to retreat or escalate. I used the time to reclaim myself. I moved back into my house. The magnolia tree was bare, its branches clawing at the winter sky. But when I opened the front door and smelled dust, old wood, and memory, my chest tightened with relief. This place still knew me. The third stair still creaked. The light in the hallway flickered the way it always had. Lisa had arranged for a cleaning service months earlier. The house was spotless in the way hotels are spotless. No warmth, no soul. My photographs were boxed and stacked in the garage like evidence of a life misplaced. I spent the first afternoon unpacking only those. That evening, Margaret came by with paperwork. We're entering the exposure phase, she said. What does that mean, I asked. It means they will try to control the narrative before you do. She was right. 2 days later, Andrew emailed extended family. Concerned, careful, framed as love. Mom is going through a difficult transition and has become distrustful. We're giving her space while we work with professionals. Professionals. I forwarded the email to Margaret without comment. Then I did something I had never done before. I told my story. Not publicly, not yet, but selectively. I called my sister first, then a cousin, then an old family friend who had known me since before Andrew was born. I did not embellish. I did not accuse. I simply explained calmly what had happened. Most listened quietly. A few apologized. One admitted Lisa had approached her weeks earlier asking questions about my mental state. That detail landed like a stone. By the end of the week, the current shifted. Andrew called on Sunday morning. I didn't know she contacted them, he said. His voice sounded tired, stripped of certainty. She contacted everyone, I replied, except me. He was quiet. I'm losing control, he admitted. No, I said gently, you never had it. That was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. Lisa, however, was done pretending. She filed a petition with the court requesting a formal capacity evaluation. When Margaret told me, I felt the old fear flare briefly. Then it faded. Good, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Good. Yes, I replied. Now it's official. The evaluation was scheduled for early March. In the meantime, Margaret uncovered something Lisa had not expected. The trust drafts Lisa had pushed so hard for were not generic. They were aggressive, designed to activate rapidly under claims of incapacity, designed to funnel control directly to Andrew and herself. This wasn't precaution, Margaret said. This was a takeover. The realization settled deep in my bones. Lisa had not reacted to a crisis. She had planned one, and that meant the rules had changed. Because when someone tries to steal your life slowly, the only defense is light. The evaluation took place in a government building that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old carpet. Neutral walls, neutral furniture, nothing personal, nothing kind. The examiner was a woman younger than Andrew, polite, efficient. She explained the process carefully as if I were fragile. I answered every question calmly. Dates, names, finances, hypotheticals designed to confuse. I did not rush. I did not argue. I did not perform competence. I simply existed in it. 3 hours later, she closed her folder. Mrs. Carter, she said you demonstrate no cognitive impairment. I smiled. I know. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I called Margaret immediately. It went exactly as expected, she said. Now we wait for the report. Lisa did not wait. She confronted me at the house that evening. No warning, no mask. You're humiliating us, she said, standing in my living room, arms crossed. Dragging this into court. Telling people lies. I did not invite her to sit. You filed for an evaluation, I replied. That's not privacy, that's accusation. She scoffed. You're paranoid. Then the report will clear me, I said calmly. And we'll see who looks paranoid after. Andrew stood behind her, silent. This house is too much for you, Lisa continued. You can't manage it. You're alone. I am not alone, I said. She laughed. You think your little friends will protect you. I looked at her steadily. No, the law will. That stopped her. Margaret's call came 3 days later. The report is final, she said. It's clean. I closed my eyes, relief washing through me. And she added, we're filing a counter petition. For what? For harassment, coercive control, and attempted undue influence. Lisa exploded. Her lawyer called, her sister called, Andrew called twice. I answered none of them. Instead, I attended a court hearing where Lisa had to sit and listen while my attorney laid out her actions step by step, calmly, methodically, without emotion. I watched her confidence unravel. When the judge asked if there was any further evidence of incapacity, her lawyer said nothing. When the judge warned against continued legal pressure, Lisa stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Outside the courthouse, Andrew approached me. She didn't mean for it to go this far, he said weakly. Yes, I replied, she did. He looked at me, then truly looked, and I saw something close to fear, because he finally understood what Lisa had gambled, and what it would cost. As I drove home, the sun setting behind the magnolia tree, I felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not triumph, clarity. The truth was no longer fragile, and now there would be consequences. By the time spring arrived, the truth had weight. It showed up in small, undeniable ways. In the way Lisa stopped attending school events. In how Andrew's colleagues began asking careful questions. In the silence of friends who had once echoed her concern and now avoided her entirely. The court documents were public record. Not sensational, not dramatic, just factual. Dates, filings, outcomes. And facts have a way of traveling quietly but thoroughly. Margaret called me one morning with a tone I had not heard before. Not cautious, not measured, satisfied. They've withdrawn their petition, she said, all of it. I sat down at my kitchen table, sunlight pooling across the wood. Just like that. Not just like that, she replied. They were advised to stop. By whom? By people who understand exposure, she said. And consequences. I closed my eyes and let the moment settle. For months I had lived in a state of readiness, braced for the next blow. Now there was nothing to brace against. But relief did not bring peace, because surrender does not erase intent. That afternoon, Andrew came to the house alone. He stood on the porch for a long time before knocking. When I opened the door, he looked older than his years. Shoulders, sagging confidence stripped away. She's furious, he said without greeting. I stepped aside and let him in. She says you turned everyone against her, he continued, that you manipulated the system. I poured coffee and handed him a mug. And what do you think? He stared into the cup. I think I didn't want to see it. Silence filled the room, heavy but honest. She showed me the trust drafts, he said quietly. The real ones. I didn't know how aggressive they were. You didn't ask, I replied gently. I was tired, he said. I let her handle things. I nodded. That's how it happens. He looked up. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. No, I said after a moment, but I don't trust you the way I used to. He swallowed. What happens now? That depends, I replied. On what you choose next. He nodded slowly. I think I need to leave. Leave, I echoed. The marriage, he said, at least for now. I did not celebrate. I did not advise, I simply listened. That night after he left, I sat alone in my living room and thought about how betrayal rarely arrives alone. It brings companions, cowardice, convenience, silence, and how recovery is not a return. It is a reconstruction. The following week, Margaret called again. We need to talk about your will, she said. Not because of them, Because of you. We met at her office, papers spread across the table. I want conditions, I said, not punishment, accountability. She nodded. You want clarity? Yes, I said, and I want it known. We revised everything. Beneficiaries were named carefully. Trusts layered with oversight. Clauses that required conduct, not proximity. Respect, not entitlement. One provision in particular made Margaret pause. You're sure? She asked. I've never been more sure, I replied. When I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in years. Because for the first time since my husband died, my future felt authored again. And somewhere I knew Lisa felt it too, even if she would never admit it. Lisa resurfaced at Easter. Not in person, in print. A long message circulated among extended family, carefully worded, emotional, framed as grief. She spoke of heartbreak, of betrayal, of trying to help someone who refused to accept reality, of being pushed out for caring too much. She never used my name. She didn't have to. I received copies from 3 different relatives within an hour. Margaret saw it too. She's testing sympathy, she said, seeing what still sticks. What do we do? I asked. Nothing, she replied. We let it fall. And it did. The responses Lisa expected never came. No public defense, no chorus of agreement, just quiet acknowledgement and distance. When someone's story has already been weighed against facts, emotion alone cannot tip the scale. Andrew called me that evening. She sent that without telling me, he said. I know, I replied. She says you ruined her life. I paused. Did I? He didn't answer. Instead, he said I moved out. The words landed softly but firmly. I got an apartment, he continued. Temporary. I need space. I exhaled slowly. That sounds wise. She's threatening to contest the will, he added. I smiled faintly. She can try. She won't win, he said. No, I agreed. She won't. The court date for the final order came quietly without drama. The judge formalized everything. The attempts to assert control were dismissed. Boundaries were established in legal language that left no room for interpretation. Lisa did not attend. Andrew did. Afterward, he walked with me to the courthouse steps. I'm sorry, he said. Not defensively, not urgently, just honestly. I know, I replied. We stood there for a moment, the city moving around us, indifferent and alive. I don't know what our relationship looks like now, he said. Neither do I answered. But it will be real. Or it will be nothing. He nodded. That evening I returned home, opened the windows, and let the spring air flood in. The magnolia tree had begun to bloom, white petals opening slowly, stubbornly. I stood in the doorway and watched the light change, feeling something settle inside me. Not victory, balance, because revenge is loud. Justice is precise. And the most powerful thing I had done was not to destroy them. It was to refuse to be erased. And the story was not over yet. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked between a grocery flyer and a utility bill. Lisa's handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp angles, confident strokes, the kind of handwriting that never doubted itself. For a long moment I considered throwing it away unopened. Silence had become my greatest power. But avoidance is not the same as closure, and I had learned that unfinished things tend to rot quietly if you leave them alone too long. I opened it. She did not apologize. She explained. She wrote about fear, about feeling overwhelmed, about stepping into responsibility because no one else would, about loving Andrew and the children and wanting stability at any cost. At any cost. She framed her actions as sacrifice, hers. She wrote that she hoped someday I would understand. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer with the rest of the documents, not as evidence, but as a reminder. Some people never stop being the hero of their own story. That same week, Andrew asked if we could have dinner. Just the 2 of us. We met at a small restaurant halfway between his apartment and my house. Neutral ground. He arrived early, stood when I walked in, unsure whether to hug me. We settled into conversation cautiously, like strangers who shared a long and complicated history. She's filing for separation, he said quietly. I nodded. I thought she might. She says you poisoned me against her. I looked at him steadily. Do you believe that? He shook his head. No, I think I finally saw what I didn't want to see. The waiter came. We ordered. Familiar habits resurfaced, small and human. I'm scared, he admitted after a while. I built my life around not questioning things. That's very common, I said. It doesn't make you evil. It makes you responsible for what you do next. He swallowed. Do you think we can fix this? I thought carefully before answering. I think we can build something new, I said. But it won't look like before, and it won't involve pretending. He nodded, eyes wet but steady. I can live with that. As we parted that night, I felt a quiet sadness. but also something gentler. Acceptance. The kind that comes when you stop bargaining with the past. A week later, Margaret called with final paperwork. Everything is settled, she said. No outstanding challenges, no pending actions. I thanked her, then asked a question that had been waiting in me for months. Margaret, I said, how often does this happen? She paused. More than you'd think, especially to women your age, especially when money and control are involved. I hung up and sat in my study, staring at the shelves of books my husband and I had collected over decades. Lives lived fully, choices made slowly. That night I started writing. Not affidavits, not journals, a story. Mine. By summer, the house felt alive again. Friends came over for dinner. Real laughter filled the rooms, not the polite kind that tiptoes around tension. I hosted a 4th of July barbecue in the backyard, grandchildren running through sprinklers, their laughter unguarded. Lisa did not attend. Andrew did. He kept his distance, respectful, careful but present. We were learning how to be honest with each other without fear of collapse. That I realized was progress. I finalized my plans quietly. Not just my will, but my life. I joined a local board for senior advocacy. I volunteered with a legal aid clinic that helped older adults navigate family and financial pressure. I began speaking selectively privately to women who told stories that sounded far too familiar. I was no longer surprised by how many there were. On the anniversary of my husband's death, I sat alone on the porch as evening fell. The magnolia petals scattered across the lawn like soft white paper. I protected it, I said aloud. All of it. I did not know if I believed in being heard anymore. But the words felt right. People sometimes ask me now if I regret how far things went, if I wish I had handled it more gently, if I worry about how it looks. Here's the truth. I regret staying silent longer than I should have. I regret confusing peace with surrender. I regret believing love required erasing myself. But I do not regret standing up. If you are listening to this and something in it feels uncomfortably close, I want you to know this. You are not dramatic, you are not ungrateful, you are not imagining it. Control wrapped in concern is still control. It is never too late to reclaim your voice, your future, your name. If this story spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you saw yourself. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about truth, justice, and women who refuse to disappear quietly, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destruction. It is survival with clarity.